Good morning, everyone. I'm Jane Clark, President of the Michigan West Coast Chamber of Commerce, and I am so excited to welcome you to today's edition of Wake Up West Coast. I'm here live in our downtown Holland studio and so happy to welcome you. Let me tell you what you can expect today. We're going to start out with remarks from our sponsor, and then of course it's time for some all-important chamber networking. And finally, the main program today is a great conversation with Abbey Johnston of AG Collaborative on courageous leadership. So now let me thank and introduce today's sponsor. Rich Houdeman is with Consumers Energy. Welcome, Rich.
Hi, I'm sorry. We're there. We got it. I was roller skating around the house. So I'm a little out of breath from that great music you were playing earlier. That was great.
Hey. That's great, Rich. Consumers Energy is a terrific friend of the Chamber, and we're so happy to have you with us today. Yeah. And appreciate you being our program sponsor. And one of the things I read about from Consumers is cleaner and greener. Can you share with our audience what that means for our business members?
Well, our business customers can really start to feel great that the majority of their energy that they consume over the next 20 years will be greatly steeped in renewables. By 2040, we will end our 100-year relationship with coal, and we will be about 55% based in renewables, which makes us feel really good as a company for our impact on the environment. And we're going to be increasingly becoming interactive with our customers. We have between about 2 and 7 in the summertime, especially this coming summer, we're going to see that we're trying to create incentives for folks to not use as much electricity during that time. And so we're going to be communicating more than ever and offering tips and suggestions on how to save money, how to become more energy efficient through rebates and upgrading with better quality LEDs and variable speed air compressors and things of that nature. We really want to get much more aligned with our customers because we need strong partnerships to become a greener and greener Michigan.
I know you've got a short video you'd like to share with us today.
Yeah, you're going to love Sam. Take it away.
Our clean energy plan, as explained by Sam.
It goes around, it makes Trixie. But if the clock goes it goes faster, 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 faster. And if it's zero, it goes.
There's a little more to it than that. So go to micleanenergy.com to find out how we plan to reach net zero emissions by 2040 and how you can save money along the way.
Consumers Energy, count on us.
Hey, thanks, Rich. What a great video. It's great for all of us to be thinking about cleaner and greener energy. Thanks to Consumers for being a wonderful partner and a great friend of the West Coast Chamber. Okay, so I'm going to welcome Abbey Johnston. Abbey is with AG Collaborative, and Abbey is our guest presenter today here for a great conversation. And our conversation today is going to be about courageous leadership. And this is a topic that's just right in Abbey's wheelhouse. Abbey has her undergraduate degree in communications and psychology from Hope College, and also her master's in leadership and communication for Gonzaga. So, she's a real expert in the conversation we're going to have. And one of the quotes that I really enjoy reading from Abbey is that she believes our greatest opportunity for owning our influence and impact lies at the intersection of communications and leadership. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And a lot of our conversation today is going to take elements of the book Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And that's a book that many of our members are very familiar with, a New York Times best-selling book, and just a really great opportunity to start a conversation today here. In fact, as I've read the book, Brené Brown would say, "Are you ready to rumble with your conversation?" So Abbey, why do you think this book and this topic are so important? Why are we all craving this feeling for courageous leadership?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Jane. I really appreciate the opportunity. I think there's countless reasons why Brené and her work, and specifically her work around courageous leadership, continues to be so attractive to us. And I think the first one is that for anyone that's read any of Brené's work, she does a great job of sort of like cutting through the veneer and getting right to the stuff, like getting right at the heart of things, often to the heart of things that like we read it and we're like, oh yeah, I know that's true, but I've never maybe had the language, or I've never really had the ability to like interact with it. And she gives you language and some frameworks for not just seeing it, but knowing how to work with it. I think we have a lot of symptom treating within our organizations, and now more than ever, we have had this massive global pandemic that has significantly cut through the veneer for all of us. And we're all craving like, okay, well, what is the thing? Like what's really at stake here? How do we show up differently? Because something needs to be different. And she does a great job at sort of hitting right at it. The other piece is that in general, leadership is such a hot topic, period. It's so interesting because you go on to Amazon and you do a search for, leadership books, and there's like 60,000 plus books on leadership. And so one of the things that we do a lot of work in at AG Collaborative is just trying to understand what leadership is. And it's a common word with no specific common definition. And Brené does a really good job of bringing it sort of out of the air and naming it as a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for the potential, seeing the potential and developing the potential in people or processes. So she hits right at the heart of things, and she also really makes leadership accessible. And I think now more than ever, we need organizations full of leaders, full of people that see who they are, know their unique contribution, and are willing to take responsibility for that. And so I think there are multiple reasons. Those are just a few that I think are part of why she remains popular, and this courageous leadership remains popular.
Yeah, it certainly is. And this is a call with a lot of leaders on it. And so it's a great topic for us today. So Abbey, you just mentioned leaders and what leadership means, but then let's layer on courageous leadership. So what does courageous then mean? Courageous leadership.
Yeah. That's another one of these words. I think it's a word that we have, just like leadership, it's a word that we have a lot of stereotypes that are connected to, a lot of assumptions that we sort of subconsciously make around a word like courageous. And often I think we link the idea of heroics with this word courage or courageous. And I think it also sort of lives in this land of, it's like a characteristic, like, oh, that person's courageous, sort of like that person's extroverted. And what we want to say about courage, and what Brené does a great job of talking about, is that courage isn't about heroics, and it's not about a specific characteristic that some people have and some people don't. It's a skill set that we can develop. It's a skill that we can grow. And at the heart of being courageous, it's simply the ability to be afraid and act anyway. It's simply the ability, and I would take it not just fear, but the willingness to step into discomfort and fear for something greater. And again, I mean, you named the current context, like we're just desperate for leaders who are willing to be afraid and act anyways, to do the things that maybe make them uncomfortable, but they know that they're doing it for something greater.
Leadership is one of the four pillars of our chamber's work this year. And so it's something we really want to focus on. And we can read about it, and I can hear what you're saying, but now you're telling me it's a skill and I've got to do it. So how do I build this concept then of courageous leadership?
Yeah, like all of Brené's work, it's like, oh yes, that's it. And it's like, oh dang, that's it.
That's a lot of work.
Skill, then I have to build it. Oh. So yeah, it is a skill. And what she does is she breaks down, so it's a skill, but I would also say it's a skill set. So that means to build courage, there's a set of skills that we really have to focus on to really develop this courage muscle. We've all got it, but we need to flex it. And she names these 4 key elements that are part of really developing courage. And the first one is vulnerability. If you know Brené Brown, you link her with this whole concept of vulnerability. And it is not, these 4 skill sets are not sort of like a quarter each as far as the program grows. We run the full Dare to Lead program, and half of the program we spend in this land of vulnerability. And vulnerability is essentially our willingness or our ability to embrace risk, uncertainty, or emotional exposure. And so if courage is the ability to be afraid and be uncomfortable and act anyway. We have to embrace vulnerability. And so that's a big pillar of the ability to be courageous. The next pillar is values. So values is a huge part of being courageous, because what we need to know, what is the thing that we're willing to be uncomfortable for? So our values are like that animating force that push us, that motivate us into those spots where, yes, we are uncomfortable, but we're willing to do it anyways, because we know there's something greater that we value than just remaining comfortable or not being afraid. And then the third skill set as part of courageous leadership is trust. So when trust is high, courageous leadership is high. Having trusting teams is foundational. And having trust within our organizations doesn't make courage easy, because then that negates what courage is, but it makes it safer. And so trust and the ability to form trusting relationships is absolutely part of becoming more courageous. And then finally, the fourth skill set, she talks about learning to rise. And she names that if we are brave enough, long enough, we're going to get knocked down. And so the key component here is, when we get knocked down, how do we get back up? How do we build resilience and continue to be courageous even when we get knocked down? So those are the four skill sets that really, spending time in each of those really builds our ability to be courageous, to choose courage. And so that's how she would name those different components. And we walk through all of those in the training that we do.
That's awesome. What do you think's, we've got these 4 steps: vulnerability, living through our values, trust, and learning to rise. What do you think's possible then if we all do choose this courageous path?
Yeah, this is the thing, like so many of us within our organizations, we have these things that we really are desperate for. Like, we work with organizations all the time, and we really want collaboration, right? We can't have really truly collaborative teams without courageous leadership. Or we want innovation. We talk all the time about like failing fast, but failing sucks. And it's really hard. So it's great in theory, but it's really hard when we're stepping into it. So if we want to be innovative, we want to fail fast, we have to build this muscle of courage. It's at the heart of that. If we want to move our conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion, to move from this sort of buzzword phase into actual environments where those things are real and true, we have to be willing to have the tough conversations and sit in uncomfortable spaces. It just doesn't happen without it. And so building courage means that we can move that needle. And I could go on and on. Like, if we want to be efficient, right? If we want to be better, faster, stronger, we have to know how to build trust and work together as a team. Those things all come on the back of courage. So we all want to grow, we all want to transform, but none of us want the discomfort that often comes with it. We talk a lot at AG about how growth and transformation comes in the stretch. And if you're like me and you can't touch your toes, the stretch is really uncomfortable. But that is where we actually move the needle. And I believe that if we are willing to get into the stretch, which courage is the vehicle to do that, then even if all of us on this call even move our ability to step into courage by 1%, I truly believe that there is remarkable possibilities that can happen within our organizations, within our relationships. And I would go so far as to say our community and our world. I truly believe that we can move the needle.
That's big thinking. I love that. This work's going to require some tough conversations, though, and for some of us, that's scary as well. Talk about the elements of having some of these tough conversations that are part of being a courageous leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk a lot about when we do work with organizations, it's sort of like, the training is like, they hope that the training makes the tough conversations not tough. And so the first piece, I think, is naming that work around getting better at tough conversations isn't that they no longer are tough.
They still exist.
They still exist. They're still tough. Like by nature, they're tough. So it's building that muscle to step into the tough conversations. Research shows that tough conversations, things aren't going poorly around tough conversations because people are having them and they're not going well. They're just not happening. People are just not getting into those tough conversations. And so part of it is being able to step into and build a level of comfortability with the discomfort. And how do we actually get into the conversation to start with? And this could be a whole chat in and of itself, Jane, but there's also the ability to recognize that tough conversations doesn't happen in a vacuum. So our cultures, the work that we're doing to build relationships and cultures outside of those moments where the conversation is tough directly is linked to the ability to have better, more effective, tough conversations. So a good, effective, tough conversations happens long before the moment ever begins where we're having that conversation, by how we are building our cultures and how we're interacting with each other within our workspaces.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit. How do we care for our people and our teammates and start building that culture of trust within the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with trust, again, I love this because we're like touching on all these massive things that we could spend forever on. But so if we talk just about trust within the workplace, I think part of our work when we dive into it in the Dare to Lead work and other workshops that we do around this is recognizing what builds trust and what breaks trust. So it's easy to talk about trust as this, like, what is trust and how do we name it and how do we really get clear on the things that build it and the things that break it? And one of the things that we know is that trust is not built in the grand gestures, in the like big gift card that happens at Christmas. Like trust is developed in the micro moments. Those moments that we have every day with people, trust is built in the small micro moments. And when it comes to trust, we're building or we're breaking. We don't have a neutral charge. So how do we show up recognizing that we are either contributing or we're detracting from the level of trust that we have within our organizations?
Yeah, so building or breaking, those are kind of some big words. And as I have listened to a lot of Brené Brown's work, it's also one of the things that's resonated for me is this concept of perfection and fear. So you just, you just kind of set that off for me a little bit. I think that perfection can also get in the way of some of these conversations and the fear of doing something wrong.
Oh, yes. Yeah, as a recovering perfectionist, I know too well the feelings that come along with that. Yeah, we strive for perfection. And really the perfectionistic tendency is about other people perceiving the perfection, not about us actually striving and creating a healthy drive towards excellence. It's really about trying to manage the perceptions of others through perfection. And when we start to try and manage the perceptions of others, we're losing the battle. And so, yes, absolutely, there's a lot involved with fear and perfectionism. And again, she does a great job of like, let's cut through all of the murk and let's get to the real stuff. Like, let's get at what's really happening within our organizations and let's cut through these perfectionistic tendencies that we see. Let's cut through the avoidance. What's the thing that's causing the behavior that's causing the organizational issues?
Mm-hmm. We often say here at the Chamber, open and honest. I think that's what I'm hearing from you. You got to lay it out there and be open and honest. Talk a little bit more. Let's explore a little bit more this concept about living into our values. How do we discover our values? And then what are the steps to start living those values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it comes to values too, I think there's individual and there's collective, right? There's a way in which discovering the things that really orient us in the world is really important individually and as an organization to know, okay, when I'm showing up to work, like what's the ultimate goal here? What are we saying we're about? And so being clear about values is super important because values are present. They just often aren't identified. And so they're there, they're running the show. We just haven't been able to get clear about them. And when we're able to get clear on them, we're able to really be that much more choiceful as leaders about how we want to show up and the decisions that we want to make. So oftentimes it's about getting in. We take people through a variety of different reflective activities that really help you get into, okay, what are the things? I mean, a value is simply something that we say has worth. Like it's something that has worth to us. And we don't want the big aspirational hope to have values. We want the values that are already pulsing within our veins and the ability to be able to see those and attend to those. Those are the things that are the driving factors for us as individuals. And then as organizations, what difference are we trying to make in the world and how are we trying to make that difference? And then what does it look like to live our values? We often talk a lot about operationalizing our values because it's great to have them on a poster, but if we don't live them, they don't mean anything. And so how do we say, we don't just value authenticity, but this is what it looks like to be authentic in our organization. It looks like a healthy yes and a healthy no. So this is what it means to live these, where we put some meat on them as an organization.
Yeah, so it's that exercise to discover what your values are. And boy, then once you know those, and you're right, they're unique to your organization and live them out, it really can be transformational. You know, we've experienced that at the Chamber, and I know in the work that you lead with your clients that really is, it just makes such a huge difference when you discover what are those unique values to you and your organization.
Yeah, they're that animating force that
Yeah.
you talked about, right? It's like, why are we showing up every day and what's directing our behavior? It's really
Right.
the values that are doing that.
Yeah, totally. So we're going to get to the end here of our time together. And I just want to wrap up. You mentioned, that last component of the 4 that lead us to courageous leadership is rising to lead. That's that last chapter of the book. So as we're ready to take that step to be courageous leaders, what's the main takeaway you would like to leave with all of us as we rise to lead in our businesses, in our own lives, and in our community?
Yeah, I think if there is a takeaway, it is that courageous leadership is for you. It's for me. Like, courageous leadership isn't something that's for someone else to do. It's for me to do. And that being courageous is something that we can do, and that it's a muscle. It's a thing that we can develop within us. And so, one, you are courageous. You can be courageous. And 2, we actually need us to be courageous. We need all of us. And I think the thing that I really want to highlight, especially within the context of leadership, is that we all have the capacity to be a leader. We hold that everyone has the capacity to be a leader. And that means that all of us are responsible for showing up with courage. And all of us have the capacity to make massive shifts within our world due to our choice to show up and be courageous.
Those are great closing words, that we all can choose to be courageous leaders. And I know our members are up to that challenge. Abbey Johnston, thanks so much for joining us today for this great conversation about daring to lead. It really makes a difference. I appreciate everybody being with us today. A final thank you to Rich Houdeman and Consumers Energy for being today's program sponsor. Thanks for everything you do for the Chamber. And then I hope you'll come back next month, Tuesday, March 9, a month from today. We're going to welcome Kavi Lennon. Kavi is now the Manager of Supplier Diversity for Meijer. And we're going to talk about the importance of supplier diversity in our businesses. So that's a wrap on today's Wake Up West Coast program. Appreciate you being here, and make it a remarkable day.
Wake up, West Coast. Make it a great week.